Welcome and a good afternoon. This is Commish Orr, and today we're going to be taking a look at the top five American League teams in the 1930s. This is in preparation for my Best of the Decades tournament using season ticket baseball. The tournament will feature the top five American League and top five National League teams of the 1930s to see who comes out on top. Assuming this one goes well, we will check some other decades out and play through those as well. But we're starting with the 1930s. I already did one video about the National League, so go check that out if you haven't already. This one will take a look at the top five teams in the American League in the 1930s, keeping in mind that there will be only one representative from every franchise, from any particular franchise. So even though the Yankees were dominant during parts of the 30s, you will only see one Yankees team in the tournament. So just bear that in mind. So I'm going to be telling you, of course, we are using, in terms of rating these teams and finding the top five, the ELO ratings that came out from 538 a few years ago. They ranked every team. ELO is a chess rating originally, but what it does is it, based on strength of schedule, based on the run differential and that kind of thing, it gives every team a rating over the course of a season. And they've rated every team up until 2015, I believe. So that's the ratings that I'm going with to choose these top five teams that we're going to appear in the tournament. But I'm going to list them down here and tell you where they ranked in the top 2,000 plus teams in the ratings, and give you a little background of who some of the top players were on the team and anything in particular about the season in question. So let's begin with the fifth seeded team in the tournament, number 5 seed team, and that is the 1939 Boston Red Sox. They are the 390th best team in Major League history up until 2015. 1939 Boston Red Sox. They finished 89, 62, and 1. They were second in the American League behind the New York Yankees. Managed by Joe Cronin, playing their games at Fenway Park, of course. Also notable is that Joe Cronin was a player manager. The other curious thing, well, I guess some interesting things about that season is that the 39 Red Sox finished 17 games back of the Yankees that year. Lefty Grove, though, won 15 games for the Red Sox. And it's also notable because Ted Williams made his Major League debut in 1939. He hit .327 with 31 homers and led the American League with 145 RBIs. So, something of note for that season. Some of their starters, their normal starters, we'll say. Catching was Johnny Peacock. At first base, they had Jimmy Fox. Bobby Doerr at second base. Joe Cronin at short. Jim Tabor at third. And outfielders were Joe Vosmick, Doc Kramer, and Ted Williams, as mentioned. Pitching for the Red Sox that year, already mentioned Lefty Grove, Jack Wilson, Fritz Ostermuller, Eldon Ocker, Denny Galehouse, and Woody Rich were a couple of the notable starters that year for the Red Sox. So they round out the number 5 seed for the American League this year, or this tournament, I should say. So we head now to number 4, the number 4 seed. By the way, in the tournament, the number 4 and 5 seeds will face off in a best-of-5 series, in a play-in series, to get into the 4-team tournament bracket. Double elimination series tournament. So it'll be, each of those series will be best of 5. But double elimination, you have to lose 2 series to get knocked out. And then the championship American League game, as well as the National League game, will be 7-game series before the final World Series best of the decades, best of the 1930s World Series between the top AL and the top NL teams in the tournament. So, who will the Boston Red Sox be playing in that play-in game? Well, the number 4 seed is the 1933 Washington Senators. Some may say the 1933 Washington Nationals. Interesting to note is that officially the team in 1933 was the Washington Nationals. However, most people refer to them as the Washington Senators. They were, in 1933, 99, 53, and 1. They led the American League and lost in the World Series to the New York Giants that year. They also were managed by Joe Cronin. So Joe Cronin managed the 33 Nationals, or 33 Senators, as well as the 39 Red Sox. So he's managing 2 teams in this tournament. They played their home games at Griffith Stadium, by the way, that year. A couple of notable things is that Cronin was selected to the All-Star team as the starting shortstop and was second in MVP voting. He also was a player manager that year as well. So just a little interesting tidbit to note. It would be the last time a Major League Baseball postseason series would be held in Washington until 2012. So 1933 was the last time before 2012 that a postseason tournament series was held in Washington. So interesting to note. Their traditional starters were Luke Sewell at catcher. By the way, hopefully I'm getting these names pronounced correctly. I haven't seen many 1930s baseball games, so some of the players obviously know how to pronounce. Others are somewhat foreign to me, and that's another thing I'm looking forward to, is kind of learning some of these players in a little bit more in depth. Anyway, at first base, Joe Kuhel. At second base, Buddy Meyer. Shortstop, Joe Cronin, as mentioned. Third base, Ossie Bluidge. And the outfielders were Fred Schulte, Heine Manouche, and Goose Goslin. Their starting pitchers were General Crowder, Earl Whitehill, Lefty Stewart, and Monty Weaver. So, be looking forward to seeing how they do in the tournament in that play-in game against the 39 Boston Red Sox. So, who's the number 3 seed in the American League? Well, it's the 1935 Detroit Tigers. They are the 43rd best team of all time, according to the ratings. I think I failed to mention, but the Washington Senators were the 74th best team. So the Tigers, the 43rd best team of all time. And in 1935, they were 93, 58, and 1 and first in the American League. And they won the World Series that year over the Chicago Cubs. Now, another interesting thing to note is that they also had a player manager, Mickey Cochran. Cochran managed the team that year and was a player. They played their games at Navin Field that year. Their traditional starters were Mickey Cochran catching, Hank Greenberg at first base, Charlie Gehringer at second, Billy Rogel at short, Marv Owen at third, and then outfielders were JoJo White, Goose Goslin, making a second appearance in the tournament here, and Pete Fox. Starting pitchers were Schoolboy Rowe, Tommy Bridges, General Crowder, and Eldon Ocker. So, that's the 1935 Detroit Tigers taking the number 3 seed in the best of the 30s for the American League. So we're getting down to the number 2. Number 2 seed is the 1931 Philadelphia Athletics, the 25th best team in Major League history. And what a team it was. The 1931 Philadelphia Athletics, finished with a record of 107-45-1. They were first in the American League that year. They did lose the World Series to the St. Louis Cardinals in 1931. Managed by Connie Mack. They played their home games at Shibe Park. It was perhaps the best season of Lefty Grove's career. He was 31-4 that year with a 2.06 ERA, winning the pitching triple crown. He had 175 strikeouts, and he was MVP. They also had a couple of 20-game winners on their team as well, George Earnshaw and Rube Wahlberg. So 3 20-plus game winners is something. So who else did they have on that team? Well, notable on the 31 Athletics was a couple of familiar faces. Mickey Cochran catching again, Jimmy Fox at first, Max Bishop at second, Dib Williams at short, Jimmy Dykes at third, and outfielders were Al Simmons, Bing Miller, and Mule Haas. Pitching that year, of course, already mentioned, Rube Wahlberg, Lefty Grove, and George Earnshaw were the top 3. But you also had Roy Mahaffey there and Wade Hoyt picking up some starts for the 31 Athletics. Powerhouse team. So if they're only number 2, who is the number 1 team? Well, the number 1 seeded American League team in the 1930s is not just the number 1 seeded American League team in the 1930s. They are, according to the ratings, the number 1 team of all time. And that team is the 1939 New York Yankees. That's right, the 1939 New York Yankees are, according to these ratings, the best team of all time. Well, they finished 106-45-1 that year. They not only won the American League, but they swept the Cincinnati Reds to win the World Series. Managed by Joe McCarthy that year, they played their games, of course, at Yankee Stadium. And what a team it was, the 1939 New York Yankees. Notable that year was that this was the year that Lou Gehrig made his famous speech early in the season. He played just a few games before having to announce his retirement on July 4th of that year. And of course, they had the Lou Gehrig Appreciation Day where he made his famous speech that particular year. So quite something. He was, the Yankees retired his uniform number 4. He was the first player in history that had a number retired. And so that is notable. If nothing else, if the rest of the team didn't make it notable, that made it notable. This team was one of only 3 Yankees teams to finish with over a 700 winning percentage. The other ones being the 27 Yankees and the 98 Yankees. So that was also great. So who was on their team? Well, Bill Dickey was catching. Babe Dahlgren was at first, Joe Gordon at second, Frankie Crosetti at short, Red Rolfe at third, and then outfielders were Charlie Keller, George Selkirk, and a 24-year-old Joe DiMaggio. Pitching for the Yankees that year were Red Ruffing, Lefty Gomez, Bump Hadley, Atlee Donald, Monty Pearson. They all picked up some starts. Oral Hildebrand had some starts also for the team, but those were kind of their top starters and top players that year. So can the 39 Yankees dominate the rest of the field here and take the American League Championship of the 1930s? We'll have to see. If you want to follow the action, you can head over to baseballmaelstrom.com, where I will be posting the progress as it happens. I like to do little recaps of the games over there. I'll also do video recaps, so you can kind of, if you want to subscribe here, you can follow the action here as well. But I'm really looking forward to this tournament to see how everything plays out. I haven't played season ticket baseball before, so that'll be a new one for me to get used to that game. I also have another project that's going to be going on here shortly, and that's a Payoff Pitch project. It'll be the second season of my Payoff Pitch League, where Hall of Famers compete against a couple of teams of non-Hall of Famers to see who comes out on top. This will be the second season of that. So, again, follow that on baseballmaelstrom.com. Leave some comments down below. Tell me what you think, whether you agree or disagree with the rankings and the seeding for this tournament. I'd love to hear it. And until next time, thanks so much for listening. Have a great evening.